how do you change society? It's the big one, isn't it? It's the $100,000 million question, or euro cost question, I would probably say. I think that the key to any deinstitutionalization process, and the key to any process that has as its goal a society where disabled people are included as citizens and valued as equal citizens, the key to that is actually empowering the individuals. I was injured when I was 23, and I've been living more than 3 decades, almost 3.5 decades as a disabled person now. The options available really to people like me who needed quite an extensive amount of assistance or care, or whatever word people choose to call it in those days. Anyway, personal help in a way. The options were home care, family, or basically living in service housing for elderly, or as I sort of lucked out because my municipality were one of a few municipalities who had this housing with services, which basically were flats connected to a main central where you had staff. But even if I had my own flat and had my own things, the fact that I was sharing services with other people meant that I wasn't really able to be me. I had to be part of a group that somebody else decided over. But what I realized when I became disabled was that the democratic citizen I used to be, the adult person, didn't really exist anymore, except in my own head. That becoming disabled, or being disabled in a way, was the same as being viewed as incapable of making decisions of your own life, incapable of being a self-determined individual, and basically allowed the government and the society and the media and basically everybody outside you to treat you in a way like a child, a ward of the state. That's what I realized very early, and it was quite a traumatic experience, I would say. I mean, Sweden closed the institutions as a house or a building, but actually they moved the institutions into the system of home care instead. So you have an institution for me is a set of rules.
Yeah, and it's an ethos, it's a culture.
An ethos, yeah, a culture.
But sometimes I can hear, for instance, politicians who don't any longer remember that we had institutions. They are sometimes discussing if it could be more effective and to have bigger and bigger group homes. And that's because they don't remember history.
Bulgaria took the same path, and there were many big institutions closed, but people who used to be in these big institutions have been moved to small group homes without any change of the institutional culture and the mindset of the staff. We have been ringing the bell very loudly that what European Union thinks to be deinstitutionalization is actually something entirely different, and it reinstitutionalizes people in smaller facilities.
There's been a strong movement in some years for this deinstitutionalization in Europe, and I think many countries, at least on the paper, have declared their will to do it. Haven't happened everywhere, but one problem is also if you deinstitutionalize or you close institutions, but you don't provide other services, you don't develop the systems to ensure that people have equal access and equal opportunity to participate, well, then you cannot really talk about deinstitutionalization, because people will be very dependent, families will be in a very poor and difficult situation economically, practically, because there are no support provided, and maybe that would actually raise an idea in the community that these institutions are better solutions. I think maybe you find this in Europe sometimes now. We have been a big recession in many countries. There have been dramatic cuts in economy in many countries, and that has affected very severely this social service system. Even though I think economically we know institutions are a very expensive solution, it's also a very poor solution for the individual in all aspects. But still, many countries are starting to look at it as a solution when they don't build when there are too big cuts in the social security. So I think that is. This is really crucial, and you need to do both. You have a political will to do it, but also to provide an alternative in a very practical sense.
How did Sweden do in the way that the government managed to close institutions many years ago, and there are no homeless disabled people hanging around? It starts with the understanding, determination, and creativity of the politicians to say the way it was is wrong. We need to make a change.
How do you achieve that? That is a problem. And I suppose the civil society organization, the disability organization, they are key actors to start that process. I think they can also join forces, obviously, with different groups that are working on human rights generally. It's very clear, if from a general human rights perspective, that institution care is not a good way of implementing human rights, and a lot of violations are actually happening in institutions of different kinds. I think that is a clear collaboration body.
Secondly, what I got about the key issue which I was interested in, namely the institutionalization, was the availability of committed disabled people themselves who would share their experience and provide support to other disabled people, who will gain confidence that independent living is not only for some, that independent living is for everyone. And this is what the convention says, actually.
I don't think as an individual actually you can get out of an institution by yourself. I think you need to join together with other disabled people, other advocates. I think you need that, because as a single person, you can fight to change your situation. And God knows I did fight to change my situation during those 10 years with Housing with Services. But the changes you actually achieve as an individual are only there as long as the individual you negotiated them with is in power and to change society, or to actually manage to get out permanently and to find a place in society and have that secure, you need to change not just individual persons or stuff like that. You need to change the structures, the rules, the way we organize. So I think that as an individual, you can achieve smaller victories for yourself, but they're fleeting by and they're not stable. You need to join together with other people and fight for a more permanent change. And when you do that, you will find other people who've done things before you, who can be role models, who you can ask for things, and I think people maybe who are in the same situation as you, and who you can discuss with, and who you can form strategies with, and who you can feel a belonging together with. And I think that is what you need. And then from there you will have to find strategies depending on where you live and the situation and the possibilities around. You will have to find strategies.
And the third message which I got actually was the commitment of the entire society to be able to accommodate disabled people in everyday life, in everyday activities, in the places where everybody goes. So it's very important to see the society being able to accommodate disabled people in everyday ordinary activities and facilities.
Nowadays, all institutions in Sweden are closed, but it's been quite a long process, and there were two challenges in general, if you should be very concluding. And one was obviously the attitude of the community. When you are closing people away in institutions, the community don't get used to see these people, to see them as equal members of the community. To shift that idea is it's a challenging thing when you're closing down institutions. People should now move out, be part of it. You should meet people from institutions every day in your everyday life and so on, and that's a new experience and something that takes a bit of time to get used to. I think second thing, which is maybe more practical, is that if you're closing down institutions, you need to provide something else in support. And obviously when you have a system of institutions in a country, you are not developing your community-based systems in a proper way, because people are taking care of somewhere else, and you don't feel locally the responsibility to take care of these people as a part of the community. So to develop these services is a long way to go also, and something that really needs commitment and political will, and of course also funding. So I think probably that is going with all countries working in this issue, but of course that was part of the Swedish history also.
I expect there to be a lot of resistance. I mean back home, because we heard that there was resistance in Sweden as well many years ago, and the resistance will come as it came here from those who have vested interest in keeping disabled people as clients, but clients who do not have much to say, because they do not pay for themselves, because they are not much aware that they are clients, not just living creatures somewhere. And this resistance, we were told, came in Sweden from the staff of the institutions and the families. The staff, because this is what they are paid for, to serve people who do not have much to say. And the family, because the family has some fears about their weak relatives, weak in terms of vulnerable members, relatives. So they are willing to see some secure environment, secure facility, good care for them. This is what families care about, and it's okay. Because the disability being seen as a disease, as vulnerability, usually raises this kind of concerns among those who love you, that you will be helpless as a disabled person, you will be really vulnerable to all sorts of dangers, of hazards around being outside. So this is the reason why families are, or have been, in Sweden opposing the process of change and inclusion, and the stuff for other reasons, but these were the two groups.
And I think it was, they were perhaps scared, they they couldn't believe that those new solutions in group homes should give necessary support. They were scared about how those people's future should be. But today there is no one who is longing after institutional life. People have accepted and they understand that that was the only right way to go.
So I do expect the same groups. Well, actually, I do not expect, I see that in Bulgaria, these two groups, staff and families, opposing any change in disability policy in Bulgaria. And we need to work with both groups. And we got some knowledge about how to work with both groups during this study visit, and it was really very helpful in this direction as well.
Choose your battles, I would say. That's my last thought. Choose your battles. Do not fight for the small issues and lose the big battles. Any organization of disabled people, I would say any organization of a minority who fights to kind of become part of society and free themselves from oppression and institutions and whatever, have a limited amount of resources in form of persons, resources in form of economy, resources in form of access to politicians and media and all sorts. And you have to be wise when you prioritize. Do not go for the small battles that these people will throw in front of you. Make sure that you know what you're fighting for. Because I've spent years in the established disability organization fighting for shit when I should have focused on the main issues. So find the main issues and do not get distracted by the small battles that people keep chugging into your way as obstacles. Prioritize and just go for it, generally. I like diversity, not just because I need it myself, but because I think a truly open society needs it. And of course, if I don't fight for the closure of institutions now, I soon will end up in one myself. Because it's not a question of one group or another, and you know, if we don't close them down, they will swallow one group after the other until we're all gone.